Thanks, Rick. Boy, oh boy, I've been here for about 10 years, so I'll try not to go on too long about this. But boy, when I came here, I was in a pretty dark period in my life 10 years ago, going through a valley, and I had accepted Jesus into my heart and knew that I needed to walk with God prior to that, about 10 years prior to that. But I kind of drifted away and got lost a little bit. And, Jeff Capozzi was bringing me here. And Rick did an altar call the one day. And so I got up. And I remember Rick asked me, have you ever accepted Jesus into your heart? And I said, yes, I have. And he said, well, what is it that you want today? And one word one word came to my mind, and it was the word deeper. I was kind of just out there, and I wanted God to take me deeper into His love because I needed that. And so I ended up writing a song out of that, that was the November 18th of 2002 that I wrote that song. So God's done a lot in my life. There's some amazing things that can happen. The birth of a child, things, the beauty of nature sometimes. But when God touches me and His Spirit moves in me and the Holy Spirit gets a hold of me, there's nothing else that can really compare to that. I shared with Rick an experience tonight about answered prayer and how powerful and how fast it happened and how direct it was and everything. And there's nothing that I've ever experienced in my life that touches me that way and just makes me feel alive. And so that's kind of what this song is about.
Take me deeper down. When everything I am is yours, that's when I'll be found. Sweet tides of love keep pulling me gently to the ground. And all that I will ask is that you take me deeper down. The shooting stars were magical among the northern lights. The wonders of the universe all laid before my sight. Moments so spectacular are very seldom found, though rare they don't compare with when you take me deeper down. To feel my tiny baby as I held her in my arms, I swear an angel came to earth with all her newborn charms. The depth of love I feel expressed with words that can't be found, but still that can't compare with when you take me deeper down. Take me deeper down. When everything I am is yours, that's when I'll be found. Sweet tides of love keep pulling me and float me to the ground. And all that I can ask is that you take me deeper down. Yeah. As I wade into the stillness, I've never felt this much. My heart cannot contain the love that's flowing from your touch. An ashen earthen vessel, I stand no higher than the ground. But all that I can ask is that you take me deeper down. Yeah. Take me deeper down. When everything I am is yours, that's when I'll be found. Sweet tides of love keep pulling me and float me to the ground. But all that I will ask is that you take me deeper down. Take me deeper, oh, deeper down, yeah. Deeper down.
Thank you. And I'm going to take these off now that I see who's here, because I need to see what's in here. So, and Rick said, you know, just feel like it's a living room, and that I know that everyone is here is my friend and cheering for me, and it's not 8:30, so I have to talk. And when Rick said, asked me, when Pastor Rick asked me, and I didn't say yes right away. I had to think about it for a while. But then I thought, I'm a woman. I can talk for an hour. This isn't going to be too difficult. So here I am, and I'm going to go through some notes. And I was kind of thinking about, you know, a testimony. I like definitions. So I do have a definition for a testimony. My heart is just going, and I'm trying to, okay, I'll be fine. So a testimony, according to Merriam-Webster, of course, it's the tablets that were inscribed with the Mosaic Law. It's the ark containing the tablets, which is a divine decree attested in the Scriptures. It's a first-hand authentication of a fact. It's evidence. It's an outward sign, a solemn declaration, usually made orally by a witness under oath in response to interrogation by a lawyer or authorized public official. It's an open acknowledgement, and for me, it's a public profession of a religious experience. Another word for a testimony is attestation, confirmation, corroboration, documentation, evidence, substantiation, testament, testimonial, proof, validation, voucher, and witness. So our testimonies are important. And I remembered, I didn't remember his name, but thank goodness for Google. We can look up anything we want and get it at our fingertips. But some of you may remember the CBS reporter, Steve Hartman. And he would, I guess in their studio, they had a map of the states, and every 2 weeks somebody would just throw a dart at the map, and then he went to wherever that dart stuck, and then he went through the local telephone book, and he picked a name at random. Then he would go to that home, and he would do a story about that person if they were willing to. So the point is that everyone has a story. Everyone here, everyone, no matter who we meet in life, they have a story. So this is my story, and I was thinking, what do I want to hear when someone says they're going to share their testimony? So I'm going to try and answer what I think I would want to hear about someone in their life. And we all have a beginning, and I was born June 15, 1955. Not everyone heard that. I hope not. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's on Facebook. Everybody knows my age. For some reason, Peter said I had to put my birth date on there, so I did. So the name Peter may come up once or twice in this. I just want to go back and just kind of go back to where kind of my environment and what I grew up in and what was home to me and what was church, and just a little bit, so you kind of, because really when I look at your faces, and some of them are blurry, but I know who you are. I know some of you better than others, and really I don't know a lot of the testimonies that are in this room. So We could have quite a few testimony Tuesdays. Yeah, I think that would be very good. So, my background, my parents were Polish. They were both born in Poland. They survived the war. My mom was the fourth child of 7 children. When she was 16, when Germany invaded Poland, they went into the homes and just took young people and moved them into their country and had them work in their homes. So my mom ended up working for a family in Germany, which is not unlike, I think Peter's mom had the same experience. And then my dad was the middle child of 3 siblings, and he was the product of a 3rd marriage. My parents met in a displaced persons camp. I'm not sure, I looked that up on Google, I'm not sure what else they called it. But anyway, they met in Germany, and then they kind of lost touch, but they had a mutual friend, and my father obviously thought my mother was worth looking up again, because he found out that she was working in Ottawa when they had both come to Canada. He came by way of ship, and he landed in Nova Scotia, Halifax. I guess that's where a lot of the Canadian displaced persons ended up. My mom, I guess, flew into Ottawa. So anyway, he found out where she was, and I remember her telling me this story. She was working for in the Spanish embassy probably as a nanny and as, just cleaning and whatever had to be done there. And so she had signed a contract, and my dad wanted to marry her, so he came down with this fur coat, like a beaver fur coat, and she said it was even the lady in the Spanish embassy didn't even have one, like she had this fur coat. So obviously it was enough for her to decide, yeah, I better go with this guy. So they ended up going to moving to Rouyn-Noranda in Quebec. There's mines there, gold mines, and my dad was a miner, or that's what he was doing there. So I have an older brother, older sister, born in Noranda, and then myself, I was born there as well. And I was only about a year or so when my dad moved down to the Niagara region. He just figured the mining wasn't going to last there forever, and we ended up in this area. We ended up in Fenwick on 2 acres of land. So I'm very used to the country. We had chickens, not more than that, a few cats and a dog. And I laugh about the dog because he's got into the chickens, and once a dog tastes the blood of a chicken, you have to get rid of that dog because they'll keep eating your chickens. So anyway, just as FYI. Now, I'm going to be saying a lot of, some things about my family, and I just want to say it in the context that I have honored my father and my mother, because the Bible says we're to do that in Exodus 20 when you look at the 10 Commandments, and it comes with the promise that when you honor your father and mother, then you will have a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. And I want a long, full life. So, so the war, my parents were in Fenwick. My father was an alcoholic. So a lot of my growing up years, I remember just drinking. My mother was not a drinker, thankfully. They were both very hard-working people. We had the farm, so they were constantly, we had an orchard, there was a garden. My dad worked wherever he could find work. Sometimes he worked in, I guess, is it industry in Welland or whatever. He worked for different plants in there, but sometimes he would get laid off, and he would go up to Elliott Lake or wherever he could find work. There'd be the car of Polish men that would take off and go and find work somewhere. But he was a drinker, and I think in some ways that was probably how he handled the memories and whatever happened during the war. I know that he had been in a labor camp for, I don't know how long, but I know he was there. I remember him, he didn't say much, but I do remember him saying how he had gone a week without food. They were shipped in these big train, kind of like compartments, containers. So I guess for, so they knew what it was like to go without food, and I'm sure they had, I can't even possibly imagine what they went through, but I know that it obviously had an effect on them. So although my dad was a very hard worker, and he was, like, he didn't miss work because of drinking or any of that, but he worked hard and he drank hard, and he, like, holidays were something that I never really looked forward to, because I knew it would be a whole weekend of seeing him getting drunk. And the first time I can remember as a child cluing in that he was actually drinking, and he would, I guess I was like his, I wouldn't say favorite, but he kind of felt very protective of me. I was born with a hair lip and a cleft palate. I required surgeries. I had to go to Montreal. I've been to Hamilton. I've been to Toronto. So I've had a number of surgeries to correct the palate in my mouth and to try and straighten my nose out. And I think they've done pretty good, actually. And take speech therapy and a lot of that stuff. So I think my dad was always he's the one that took me to these appointments, and he was just protective. Anyway, sometimes he'd want to go somewhere and he'd take me with him, and we would go visiting, in these big, huge cars way back then, these. Anyway, we were coming home from visiting some friends, and he hit the garage door, like with the car, because he'd been drinking, and I didn't realize. But it was the first time I looked at him and realized that there was something wrong here, that we shouldn't have been out. As a little child, you're thinking, what's going on? So that was the first time I realized that he was a drinker. My mom, and I think, I know he was verbally abusive with my mom. I can't say I've ever saw him physically hit her, but my older brother and sister have said that there was physical abuse, not that I was aware of. And the three of us, or actually there was four of us. I had a younger brother, and he was born in Welland. He was 8 years old, and he got quite sick, quite ill. He was 8, I was 10, so he was like, we would play together, and he was just kind of, you're out in the country. We didn't have a TV. We had an outhouse for many, many years, so we didn't even have, plumbing. So now I appreciate everything, because when you go through and you have very little, you appreciate what you have. So Leon was sort of like, we had 2 acres, and my parents were always saying, get out there and play. So we did. That's, you just went out and you played. But so Leon got really ill, and it took a while, but they diagnosed him with leukemia in March, and August 1st he died. It was a real, it's a tragic, a small child dying. But our family wasn't one to really talk about things. It was just, I guess because they probably worked so hard suppressing all those memories from the war in their past, that when this kind of happened, this is just another thing that you never really talked about or acknowledged openly, and you certainly don't ever acknowledge feelings, because that was too dangerous. I think for them to talk to us about feelings would have been like, anyway. So I missed him a lot. He really was a special little guy. Okay, I thought I might need Kleenex, but I'm okay. I'm okay. So things change. Whenever there is, I think, a traumatic, and I have a few of them, traumatic experiences, the alcohol was ongoing. That was like, that was, as far as I could remember, there was my dad drinking. And then, so I'm growing up in a family that there isn't much talk about feelings, emotions. There is religion. They were Catholic. My parents were both very Catholic, and there was a church that was about a mile or so down the road. And we would go, we went as a family to church, and we went to Mass, and we did the thing where at Easter you take the basket and you get the food blessed and all that kind of stuff. But that was religion. Like, that really was religion. Like, there was no kind of knowing who Jesus was. My father didn't trust nuns, so I never went to a Catholic church. He thought they were kind of mean, so we ended up all going to public school. So, in a way, that was church. You kind of get a sense of who you are from your family, and then school, and then church. And I always felt different because I had that physical handicap, and I looked different, and I talked, my speech was really, really, really bad. And although I felt I was fairly smart, like I would never raise my hand up in school because, you just don't want to be laughed at. So you learn to be really quiet. And not only do you feel different, but there's that shame. There's a sense of shame. Like, you just wish things weren't the way they were, whether it was at home, whether it was with you personally. Thank you. So I didn't have a lot of self-confidence, and self-esteem was kind of low. And then you try and I want to say something about young people and friendships, because the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 15:33, "Do not be so deceived and misled. Evil companionships, communion, and associations corrupt and deprave good manners and morals and character." It is so important who you become friends with and who you choose to hang around with. They will have an influence over your behavior, whether you realize it or not. And quite often when you're young, you don't realize it at all. So I ended up having a best friend who, like I said, alcohol was in the home. But when I started hanging around with this girl, in her home it was even worse because both her parents were drinking, and there was a whole attitude and atmosphere of permissiveness. There was like anything goes, and it was okay to be smoking and drinking, and so I got into all of that. I got into the just being around guys, and just, it was not a good atmosphere at all. At the time, you think it's fun, and you think, but I mean, we would skip school and go to her house, and her mom was, yeah, okay, it was no big deal. So, let me see, then as I started smoking when I was about 13. I was drinking, going to high school, thinking it was cool to go to the school parties and have a bottle of wine out in I went to Crosley, so there was a field out there. So we would hide our alcohol in the field, and, you go and have whatever, and then you come into the dance, and yeah, that was my teen years were quite like that, a lot. So when I was about 17, I was again with somebody I should not have been with, and he was driving and drinking and driving. And we were visiting his sister out in Long Beach, and we were on our way to a party, and I had just gotten my beginners, and I said, you know what, maybe I should drive. And he said, no, 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 I'll drive. Well, he drove, and next thing I know, I wake up in a hospital. It was a foggy, foggy night. I remember getting into the car, and then I remember kind of hearing someone screaming, and apparently it was me screaming. So I had been the car that we hit, and the driver that I was with, it was his fault. He hit somebody else, head-on kind of thing, but more on my side. So I had sliced quite a bit of my shoulder, and had to have surgery, which should have been done by a plastic surgeon. It wasn't. The guy at the Port Colborne Hospital felt he could do a good enough job, and he kind of patched me together. That was a little bit of an eye-opener because, you know, you could have lost your life. That, you know, that could have happened. So I think that was a time when I just started to feel a little bit more mature and really thinking about life in a different way, and deciding I need to also move away from home because the drinking was still going on, and my sister had gone to Toronto, and she ended up doing quite well. I thought when I graduate grade 13, there's no jobs in Fenwick. I don't have transportation. I'm going to Toronto. So I ended up going to Toronto. In a way, I'm going to really try and make this short because I want to spend more time on the good stuff. But this is all important too because this is who we are, and this is, you know, this is the life that I lived, and it wasn't always great. But you know, I've heard it said that that a diamond is formed because of a lot of heat, and it gets so hot that whatever is the diamond's made of, it actually, I didn't say that very well, but anyway, takes a lot of heat to make a great diamond is what I'm saying. So really I got into drinking and I got into partying. I ended up going to Toronto. I worked there for a couple of years, had a relationship there, could have gotten married, but thankfully I didn't. Ended up going to Kingston College. I don't remember much about college because I think if I drank before, I really, really drank in college. Like, it was like, I don't even know how I did those 2 years. I went for a correctional officer degree, diploma, and I ended up working having a field placement in a group home in Toronto, and that's when I realized that I really loved working with kids. There was just something really special about them, so I really liked that. I ended up getting a job in the group home in Toronto for 2 years, but I was really missing home, and my sister had her first child, and I wanted to be home and to be with my family. I ended up moving back to Welland, and working. I had 3 jobs, and then I got a full-time job at FACS, Family and Children's Services, in a home where kids came from, well, they're anywhere from the ages of 10 to about 16, and these children had a lot of problems. They weren't able to live at home for many, many, many different reasons. Some of them were criminal, some of them were behavioral, some of them were because the parents were having a lot of problems or were on drugs or whatever. So, anyway, I just remember when I was living in Toronto, and then when I moved back home, I was just feeling really lonely and really depressed, and just drinking and just not happy with who I was. I made a friend, and I got into, um, exercising, but in the bodybuilding type of exercising and doing weights and whatever. And this girl was like a spotter for me, and we just struck up a friendship, and I really put a lot, I really enjoyed that when I was exercising and doing that, and it was a real passion for me, and I probably would have maybe gone into it more seriously, but when you're a bodybuilder, you have to have like very, very little fat on your body, and I just enjoyed food just a little bit too much for that to ever work for me. So, anyway, so Lisa was her name, and she was pregnant, had her little girl, and I went to visit her one day. We went out for lunch, and I noticed there was something different about her, and it was so obvious. To me, it was like, what is going on with you? And you seem so different. You started talking about her pastor, and she was married by Pastor West, and she was going to this church, and this is not like the Lisa that I knew before, because she was, this is not how our conversations used to go. So, but I have to say before that, one thing happened. Well, it was an important thing, very important thing. It was one of those nights where I was home alone, and I finished off a bottle of wine, because, that's what you do when you're home alone and you're depressed. And so you drink some more and get even more depressed. And I had smoked up, and I was getting ready to go to bed, and I put on the TV, and I got Ben Kinchlow of the 700 Club. And I was listening to him, and it was like he was talking to me, because he was saying, you have tried everything. And everything he was saying, it was like he was looking right at me and talking to me. He said, so if you tried everything and you just want to give up, try this prayer. Say this prayer after me. So I said the prayer after him, and I meant it. Like, I knew I meant it. Like, I was desperate. Like, I had enough of this life. And I was about 30 then, so I was about ready for a change. So I said the prayer, didn't think much about it at all, really. But I started to notice when I went outside, I noticed the trees and the flowers and the sky, and everything seemed a little brighter. And it was and I went to work one Sunday, and I started crying, and I was just sobbing. I think, why am I crying? And I picked up the telephone book, and next thing I know, I'm looking for a church. So I knew that I needed to get close to God. I just didn't know how. So then, in the meantime, I met up with Lisa again, and she mentioned her church, invited me to her church. So I went. Actually, it wasn't that easy. She was supposed to pick me up, and her husband was in a bodybuilding competition, and my car broke down that day, and so she got another friend to pick me up. So I went to Abundant Life, and from the moment I walked in, it was like I could not stop crying. And, I mean, you feel foolish. This is your first place going somewhere like that, and you're crying. And I remember them playing the song, To Be Like Jesus, and that even made me weep even more. So finally, they did the altar call, and I went up. And, I mean, I'm up there, and, I mean, like, there's no Kleenex, and I've got, like, tears streaming. It's not kind of, oh, this is not nice, not pretty. But that was my public declaration or confession. So I went home, and that day I knew when I got home that I had to confess every sin that I knew of. And I got on my knees, I knelt by my bed, and I knew Romans 5:8 that says, but God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And who is a sinner? Well, Romans also answers that question. Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And I knew that was me, and I had a lot of confessing to do, so I'm sure I spent quite a bit of time. But what a relief. I got up from there, just feeling that the whole weight of the world was off my shoulders, because I had done what it says in Romans 10:9, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So that was how I came to know the Lord. But that's just the beginning of a new chapter. And when you make a decision like that, there'll be fallout. Because some of the friends that you had, they're not going to be your friends anymore. And your family, oh, man, they're going to think you're like a religious nut. So, and it was drastic. But I knew it was real, and when you know that something is real, nobody can tell you that it's not, because it's your own personal experience. And when you know that there's been such a change in you, and that you feel as wonderful as you do, you try and tell everyone you know around you. So, of course, I went around telling everybody, but not too many people really want to hear that. And you know what? I can understand that a little bit, because it's so easy to say some things, but really you have to walk that. You have to live that life. You have to be the person you say that you are. Otherwise, what are you really? You're just like anybody else who spouts off at the mouth and then turns around and does their own thing. So I knew that this was real. I knew I wanted it to be real. And I really got involved. I went to church faithfully. I went to the early morning prayer meetings. I went to the Wednesday meetings. I went to conferences. And mind you, in the meantime, God had put although I had lost some friends or lost some people, God gave me such wonderful people in my life to help me and to kind of show me the love of the Lord, and to make me feel loved. One person in particular, there's many, but one person who I really hold dear to my heart, and that was Martina, and she was a Bible study teacher at the time, and at Abundant Life, and so I started right away going to her Tuesday night classes, and they were a real good teaching for me too. And she just took for some reason, the Lord put me on her heart, and she kind of really took me under her wing and really mentored me a lot. We may not have a lot of friends, and there might be times when you think you don't have a lot of friends, but really all you need is 1, 2, 3. You just need a few really good, special, dear friends that will stick with you when things go tough. And Martina was that friend, because although I was saved and although I was now walking with the Lord, it doesn't mean that your life is going to be like easy or smooth or everything is going to go the way you think it's going to go. It doesn't. So getting back to how I was feeling with my family and how things were there, because they noticed a change in me, but God was still dealing with me, because when God comes into your heart, he changes you. He may not change the people around you right away, but they'll see there's a change in you. And my parents would have probably seen a change, but God started showing me that they really were the best parents that they could be under the circumstances that they had gone under. And when I was in Fenwick, when we lived in Fenwick, we used to have strawberries, and we would sell them by the road. Now, I don't know how transparent I should be, so I have a good example in Pastor Rick, because we know how he just opens himself right up. So you know what, I'm just going to go for it, and I'll just be really transparent and honest about what I want to say about my life and about experiences that I've gone through. But so I would help my mom, and we would pick and sell these strawberries, and the money she would kind of keep in this little container. And so, mind you, I was drinking and going out and whatever, and I wanted some money one day, and I just decided to go and help myself. So I stole money from this container. I remember walking out out of the bedroom, and my dad kind of looked at me, and I don't know if I had kind of tucked the money not quite as well as I thought I had or something, but I just remember feeling this guilty kind of, but I kept right on going. Well, many, many years later, I came to visit my parents, and I really felt that I needed to confess that to them and to ask for their forgiveness. And it takes a lot of courage to do that, but I am so thankful because the rewards, when you bring anything out in the open, the devil cannot put his finger on that anymore. So I think my dad was retired about this time, and I'm there in the kitchen saying, Mom and Dad, I want to talk to you, and they're looking at me like I'm going to tell them something, I don't know, they were really concerned for a minute. I said, I have to tell you that years ago I stole money from the strawberry money, and I have to ask you to forgive me, and I really am sorry, and please forgive me. I haven't always been the daughter that I should have been. And they're like in shock, I think. And they're like, but I know they heard it, and I know that it changed something in our relationship. Because many years later, after my father had a stroke, they trusted me with the finances. They would trust me with the banking and anything that had to do with money. Not that I'm saying they couldn't trust my older brother or sister. That was their decision. Either one of them would have been just fine. So important that when we feel that we need to ask someone forgiveness, we really should do it. Like, it's just, bite the bullet and do it, because the rewards are they're wonderful. Now I am, where am I now? Let me see where I want to go next. Talking about how things aren't always easy, or there aren't always the way you think they're going to go. One of the scriptures that has been something that I have tried to remember and kind of pay attention to is John 10:10, and I really like it in the Amplified. Sorry, Pastor. The thief comes only in order to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have and enjoy life and have it in abundance to the full till it overflows. Amplified. Yeah. When I was going through all those operations and growing up to be a young girl and just a teenager or whatever, I just wanted to be pretty. Any girl does, but I never felt that for a long time. But God has been so good. He has brought the right doctors, plastic surgeons into my life. And I used to think that was so important. But I had a revelation kind of like this weekend. And Alexander was showing pictures of people in Cuba. And I remember that one of the women in the walker. And I saw her face. And I thought, she is beautiful. And that's just like hit me, like, she is beautiful. Never mind being pretty anymore. I'm out to be beautiful now. And then that afternoon, we went to Peter's mom, his mother, and I'm looking at her at the kitchen table with the sunlight, the way it was playing on her hair and stuff. I said, you know what, she is beautiful. Like, she's 88 years old, and she is beautiful. And there's something wrong with this society and what we call beautiful and what we call pretty or whatever. Like, the inner beauty of these women and what they've gone through in their life and the joy and just, it was radiating, and that's what I want. I really now want to radiate the glory of the Lord. There's nothing more important than that. It's only 8 o'clock. I thought I could do this for like, no, I mean, okay, I can talk some more because we have to get to Peter. Yeah, I have to. So, here I am, I'm 30, not married. 35, not married. 40, not married. Something's going on here. What's going on? But it was the Lord's timing, because my father had a stroke in 1992. I wouldn't have been able to have a relationship. I think I met Peter in 94, 95. But anyway, so it was really necessary for me to be with my family and to provide the support and to do the things that I need to do, just to be there for my dad. It was a long illness. He was ill and up and down. I mean, he had more than one stroke. He was on dialysis. It required a lot of care in terms of us just transportation. My sister's a nurse. We both work in shifts. You're trying to, be there and do these things that you have to do. My own health was not great. I had been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. I was really, after having worked out so many years and feeling so on top of things, it was really quite a shock to me to have to deal with that as well. And but can you imagine having to deal with all of that and not having the Lord? Like, I think so many times, and I have to say, I didn't mention this, but God immediately delivered me from alcohol. Like, immediately. I had no desire for alcohol at all. I had quit smoking prior to coming to know the Lord, but and I'm very thankful for that as well. And I'm not opposed to anyone having a glass of wine or a bottle of beer, but I know for me that would not be a good thing. So I choose not to have any of that kind of stuff anymore. I think I drank enough to last me a lifetime anyway, so I'm not missing anything. So then I was in a really tough spot in terms of where I was living, and I had to find a place to live, and Martina insisted that I come and live with her. She wouldn't take no for an answer, and she knew what was best. And since I respect her and just am very thankful, I got to live 6 years with Martina, and it was an amazing time, because she was there with that prayer support when I was going through all that stuff with my health and my father, and she was just really there for me. And she also knew Peter, so that's Martina was sort of an associate pastor when Downtown Gospel opened up, and Peter was doing the sound for John and Jennifer Ramsden at the time. And that's when I probably would have first seen him, was on a Sunday. So I met Peter, and I heard that he was Polish. And I had said years ago, I will never marry anyone Polish. Like, that will never, ever happen. Don't ever say you will never, ever. So really, when I met Peter, it was very just, very kind of superficial, hi, how are you kind of thing, and we really didn't have a whole lot of contact. But Martina would have problems with her computer, and Peter would come over and help her out, and initially they were, Kathy. Good question. But she kind of had this, I came home from work one day, she goes, Veronica, sit down, I have a word from the Lord. And when Martina says that, you sit down. And this one involved Peter, so I thought, and it changed my whole, because I had just looked at him as being just another Polish male. So this was, this changed the whole course of how I was looking at Peter. And he had just got his car around that time from Haldeman, yes. And I was looking to get a new car. Because my dad, bless his heart, he had kind of said to my mom before he passed away, make sure Veronica gets a new car. So, and I have to talk about him passing for a minute. Because I, of course, been praying for him. And I wondered why he had to go through so much, because he really did, physically and with his health and the hospital and his mind. But when I knew that he was going to die, and I always thought that would be the worst day of my life, would be to see my dad die, because we were kind of special, him and I together. And so I went to see him. He wasn't able to talk. He was in a coma. And I knew he could hear me. I just knew he could hear me. And I knew this was the last thing I was going to say to him. So I just said to him, I said, Dad, go to Jesus. Go to Jesus. And I left, and I got the phone call. Martina's about 5, 6 in the morning that next day, and my sister said that he had passed away. So I went to Hotel Dieu Hospital, and by myself, I went there. I went in that room, and the Holy Spirit has so filled that room. I couldn't see the angels, but I could feel them. And it was so thick. It was just God so assuring me that everything was fine, that my dad was with the Lord. And even when I got in my car, I was driving to Welland to go see my mom and to get my mom. That same Holy Spirit filled my car all the way from St. Catharines to Welland. And the day of his funeral, like, I had such strength and peace, and it was, only God can do that. The Word says that Jesus gives us peace which passeth all understanding. Not the kind of peace this world can give us, but only He can give us. And I experienced that. Now getting back to Peter. So Martina said, maybe you can ask Peter if he can go with you and look for a new car, or look for a car. So, because he was all excited about his car, he just had purchased it, and so yeah, okay. So he said, yeah, okay, fine, we'll go to Haldeman. So we went, and I thought, this guy is so funny. And I just liked him so much. I had the best day, best. We went and looked at cars. We went to Empty Bellies for supper or lunch or whatever. He dropped me off, and then he didn't call me for months. I know. Oh my! He did that to me. Can you believe it? He actually. It's like he dropped out of the So then Martina started having problems with her computer. So yeah, so I'm thinking, oh, you know, and then Martina, she's funny. Like she said, why don't we just drive by, see where he lives, kind of thing, and just check him out. And, like, you know, you wouldn't believe this from Martina, but she has a really neat sense of humor. And you know, and I remember one time, he came to fix the computer. She was, why don't you run a bath? So I've got the bath running and these wonderful smells coming out. So, yeah, I know. Can you believe it? I did that. I know. You guys are shaking your head thinking. So, then I was going to Israel. And I mean, that's it. That's about as far as I'm going. I pulled all the stops. We've done everything I can think of. Prayed. I'm going to Israel. And then Martina says, if he doesn't call you back when you get home from Israel, like, you know, I said, okay, fine, okay. So I come back, and he called. And he called, and it was Valentine's Day. See, he made up for it. He called on Valentine's Day to ask me out. So the rest is history, as you know, because here he is. So, and little did I know that I got married, and as some of you would remember, and, it was kind of neat because the day we got married, my mother-in-law and my mother wore the same dress, different colors, but they wore the exact same dress. So that was just another confirmation to me that this was meant to me. That's important to us girls. So, got married October 7th, 2000. Peter picked that year because he wanted to remember that date. And as our anniversary, 2000, you can remember the year 2000. Then my mom, I didn't know this, but she was very sick, very sick. And I knew I had been living with my mom actually for I moved out of Martinez in March, and then I moved in with my mom, and we kind of did a mean thing to my mom because she didn't know that Peter was Polish, and then so she'd be talking to me in Polish, and then out of the blue, Peter just started talking back to her in Polish, and just like so I was at my mom's for about 6 months. Not that I ever really saw her, because when Peter and I were like dating, it was like crazy. Like we were constantly going here, there, everywhere, and then we ended up deciding he actually asked me to marry him at my mother's house. It was kind of cute. So in a way, August 29th, I remember that date too, 2000. So Mom was really ill. I knew she hadn't been eating well and just didn't look the same, but bless my sister, she knew that my mom had cancer at the wedding, and she never told me because she didn't want to spoil that day for me. So Mom got sick really quickly. She had pancreatic cancer, and she passed away in February. I would have lost all of my Polish roots and my culture. Now I'm married to Peter, so I get to go over there and listen to them all talk about things in Polish and get to eat all their good Polish food. And his family actually is very amazing. You made me feel very welcome, and they have been very, very loving and caring to this day. And I feel special to be part of that family. I said the word special, and I just want to go back to working with kids. And I have this thing about birthdays. I just feel that people need to be celebrated on their birthday. And one of the nicest things well, there's a few nice things that have happened, but one of them, I remember one year Linda called me, and she was at work, and she very quietly, in that beautiful voice of hers, saying, a happy birthday to you. And here she, things like that really touch me. Like, I remember things that are just small, but they're touching. Alexander called me from Uganda on my birthday. Can you imagine somebody thinking enough of you to even think of you on your birthday, let alone do that? I love birthdays, and I love to make people feel special on their birthdays, because I think each and every one of us were created, we know we were created in His image, but we're so special to Him. And I think our natural birthday is the day to say to someone, I think you're special, and I want to acknowledge that. I don't have a birthday coming up, so I'm not, but I mean, I used to do that with the kids at work. I used to try and tell them that they were special. When I worked for over 30 years in that residence, and I worked with a lot of different kids. And that's why I get so excited when I look at the young people that I'm looking at today, and I think of how wonderful it is that you've come to know the Lord when you have, and the kind of decisions that you are making about your life. There's nothing more important than following what God has for you. Nothing is more important than that, because He knows what's best for you. And I get so excited, and I'm thrilled when I look over the pictures, Alexander, that you posted. And I go over them, and I read those stories about the little children and the lives that you're impacting when you go somewhere. And I know we're part of all that. Not everyone can go, but whatever you do in your lives, the sooner you can do it, the sooner you can say yes to the Lord, the sooner you can follow Him, how much more rewarding that has to be for you. And how wonderful it is for your parents to see. I see parents that are so distraught and have seen many different families in the work that I was doing, and see the turmoil and the anguish and the hurt and the pain and the tragic circumstances that some kids have gone through, and what their parents go through, and to see what poor choices sometimes we make and how that affects your choices affect the people around you. Don't ever buy that lie that it doesn't matter, or nobody will know, or your decisions, your choices have an impact on everyone, and especially those who love you and live in your life, in your circle of friends or family, whatever. I just don't know really how I want to end this, but other than saying this is still a journey, and I'm still in it, and I'm still going on. But one thing about having gone through the things that I have gone through, and not maybe having, the best life, dysfunctional, you do have an appreciation for, I always loved kids, and I always felt that I could understand their pain or what they went through, what they came in because there was alcohol in their families, or because there was some sort of abuse in their families, or if they felt different. Because I think that's one of the biggest lies that the enemy puts on people, is that you're different. And you have to tell him, no, I'm special. And that really is where I think I want to end that. But I want to end it with this, because this is really where we started. And I love this. Thank you, Pastor Rick, for calling earlier today. Psalm 145. I will exalt you, my God and King, and praise your name forever and ever. I will praise you every day. Yes, I will praise you forever. Great is the Lord. He is most worthy of praise. No one can measure his greatness. Let each generation tell its children of your mighty acts. Let them proclaim your power. I will meditate on your majestic, glorious splendor and your wonderful miracles. Your awe-inspiring deeds will be on every tongue. I will proclaim your greatness. Everyone will share the story of your wonderful goodness. They will sing with joy about your righteousness. The Lord is merciful and compassionate, slow to get angry, and filled with unfailing love. The Lord is good to everyone. He showers compassion on all his creation. All of your works will thank you, Lord, and your faithful followers will praise you. They will speak of the glory of your kingdom. They will give examples of your power. They will tell about your mighty deeds and about the majesty and the glory of your reign. For your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. You rule throughout all generations. The Lord always keeps his promises. He is gracious in all he does. The Lord helps the fallen and lifts those bent beneath their loads. The eyes of all look to you in hope. You give them their food as they need it. When you open your hand, you satisfy the hunger and thirst of every living thing. The Lord is righteous in everything he does. He is filled with kindness. The Lord is close to all who call on him. Yes, to all who call on him in truth. He grants the desires of those who fear him. He hears their cries for help and rescues them. The Lord protects all those who love him, but he destroys the wicked. I will praise the Lord, and may everyone on earth bless his holy name forever and ever. Thank you.